Good morning. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kristen Schultz. I coordinate the Early Childhood Alliance in Park City, Utah. And we had wanted to make available to you all the fabulous team at Holy Cross Ministries who have helped a lot of clients apply for the child care subsidy from the Utah Department of Workforce Services. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Carlos Flores to introduce his team and give a quick overview of how the child care subsidy application process works, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I think we were hoping that this would be pretty informal. Please feel free to take yourself off mute or raise your hand if you want to ask a question. But thanks for joining us this morning. And Carlos, thanks for having your team here to help us understand the application process. Take it away.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Carlos Flores. I am the Health Outreach Manager here at Holy Cross Ministries, and then we're just gonna be doing a quick overview of how this whole child subsidy process works, how the application works, what seems to be the stuff that we're seeing when we're actually working on cases, what seems to be working, what seems not to be working. Hopefully this will give you guys a better idea of how we can actually get all those families approved. But for that, I'd like to introduce my team, Estefania and Carmen, and I got two other community health workers joining in here any minute now. But Estefania and Carmen are the ones that have been doing these applications for a few months now. So they're the ones that are going to be answering all of the questions because they're the ones like seeing what's going on out there in the community. So Estefania and Carmen.
Hi, I'm Estefania. I'm one of the community health workers. To be quite honest with you, I haven't done too many childcare applications. They've just been ongoing. I'm still not 100% sure as to why DWS likes to kind of elongate the process with a lot of those childcare applications. What I've seen is it mostly boils down to the income for each family member. And if they're even like $1 or $2 over what the limit is, they are not getting approved. I have had success with a few clients, but ultimately it's just up to them getting that paperwork in, and that's why it's been taking so long for some of them. But I mean, it's still a pretty new process. I know Carmen hasn't done as many childcare applications as I have, but we're definitely still learning, definitely still seeing new things coming in, and I'm just happy to keep seeing what happens next.
I'm on mute. I think the same thing with Estefania. The applications that I have done in the past, it's pretty much cut and dry. They are requesting income, anything that DWS requires or sends to the clients for verifications. It's very important that that information is sent over as quickly as possible. Many times the clients are not sending in needed documentation on a timely manner. They do have deadlines that they are requesting, and many times due to either maybe the client not checking their actual mailbox to see on a day-to-day basis to see what letters they've received, they're not able to meet those deadlines. So it's a team effort, I want to say. It's great that we have the opportunity to speak with DWS eligibility workers to help us along with the process and see whatever is needed. And also sometimes I know that I've asked for either extensions or just informing them that that person is sending that documentation in, and it will be sent in either through imaging or if we have access via the 114 forms, we can actually upload into the caseloads to kind of help expedite the process.
Wonderful, thank you. Carlos, can you give just kind of an overview generally of what's required in the child care subsidy application?
Yeah, well, Carmen or Stefania, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually paycheck stubs, the children's social security number, and just like general information like dates of birth, addresses, stuff like that. It seems that what is it that you guys have been having trouble the most as far as documents that DWS requests for these applications?
I mean, I know personally from each client that I've helped, they have a really hard time just putting in those pay stubs. A lot of the time they're getting paid in cash. And so they think that there's no way for them to get that information. And we know we give them alternatives, but they still kind of get scared of turning that information in. I mean, we try our best to be as clear as possible, but sometimes it just, I'm not sure. I know that's what I have a tough time with.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've noticed when we started doing these applications is that I don't know, somehow the message never really got into the community, or even if we try to get it into the community, because it's such a new process that people still are very hesitant to even apply for this. And it doesn't help also that attorneys or you know, people tell them that they shouldn't be applying for this because of their immigration status. So that it's like an extra, you know, obstacle that people get on top of their cases, because it's like it seems that the fresh, it's because it's so fresh that this news hasn't really sunk in into.
Sometimes the social security numbers is an issue. There may be parents that they do not have a social security number, but the children were born here and they are United States citizens with a social security number. So just because the parent doesn't have a social security number, they can still apply for their children because the children are the ones that are receiving the benefits. Another thing might be, I know lots of the parents are having issues like with ORS, maybe not completing an ORS, cooperating with ORS and completing that application for documentation purposes. And some of the families that are working, that are getting paid, but are getting paid in cash, many times they don't have any proof. So we always request for them to have their employer just write a letter indicating the same things that DWS always requests, which is, again, you know, the income, the frequency of pay, the rate of pay, who the name of the person is that's paying them, having them sign the form as well, and then also giving them the their phone number so that if they need to communicate with that person, they have access to do so. Yeah, those are some of the things that some of the families have a little bit issues with. And of course, always a public charge.
On those pay letters, they always have an issue with the signature as well. Either one signature is there and the other isn't, or both of them never signed. And DWS is they need signatures, dates, and ways to get in contact with their employers. And yeah, it's a good time.
So just to make sure I'm understanding, so the employer letter needs to be signed not only by the employer, but also the employee on the same letter?
Yes.
Okay. And does DWS provide a form for this, or do you all have a kind of form that you found to be useful?
So there is a form. It's the 630 form, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carmen. That is usually the employer information. A lot of the time, DWS, the workers do allow them to just have a written letter from the employer. So sometimes people prefer to do it that way. I have a letter I'm looking at right here that just has which days they work, how many hours a day, and then it has a note that says this can vary depending on the because it's a seasonal job, it can vary depending on the week, on the month, and then the person's phone number, the signature, and the date. That's usually the route people like to go. if that makes any sense. Instead of like the official paperwork, they will write it down themselves. They feel more secure that way, is what I've seen.
Great. Alex, welcome.
Yeah, hey everybody. Quick question. So you had said you talked about paycheck stubs. I'm wondering how many paycheck stubs do they request? Because like my husband's taking a big pay cut in January. Do we have to wait till he has 4 paycheck stubs to apply?
Usually they ask for the last 30 days from when the application is submitted. But again, that varies depending on the worker, the caseworker. But we
Yeah.
usually say 30 days to be safe.
Okay.
And I found that many times when there's a maybe they're self-employed, they have some kind of a self-employment business. They ask for multiple statements, employer statements, and they send those forms over to them as well to complete. I've had a case where they have gone back to 1 full year of employment from the self-employment business. So, and then they also requested bank statements as well as copies of the W-2s, or not W-2s, I'm sorry, the income tax forms. So it just depends on, I guess, who the eligibility worker is, because that many times things change. They may send a form out or a letter out to the client and requesting one thing, and then when that is sent in, then another letter will go out. We'll say, no, we need this as well. So it just depends on whatever they're requesting. They have to have very detailed statements. They have to have detailed expenses and income that they're making, because they need to verify that, because it is falling under income guidelines for DWS. I've run into that as well.
Right. So in general, these are federal dollars that the state is administering. And so 85% of the state median income is a cap for the program. So I think when the applicants are self-employed, it may be a little bit more difficult to prove up income. But in general, DWS will need to know income, number of hours that you work, and then proving up the legal residency of the child, but not the adult. And I do want to clarify, because Carmen, you had mentioned there's concerns about public charge, and this is not something that can be considered in a public charge analysis. So I think the more we can educate families about the availability of this subsidy, even though I understand that the application process is a little bit of a hassle to get through, you know, for example, from birth to age 2, if you're in a licensed center, the subsidy is about $1,000 a month. And children are eligible until they're 13 years old or 18 if they have a disability. So for families that can kind of get through the application process, this really is a substantial benefit to provide childcare to the children. So I think it's really important for people to understand how the subsidy works. Alex.
Yeah, sorry, it's me again. What is that income, the 85% of that median income? Do you know what that number is?
I do, and I'll share a chart with those numbers. Let me grab it. Let's see. All right, are you seeing the monthly income and annual income limits? Yeah, so for a family of 3, for example, it's about $66,000 a year. And they do, you know, they do make it clear. I also, while this chart is here, you know, they do make it clear that you don't have to provide the Social Security number, but the application will ask for it for the parent one. So people need to understand that you can leave that blank, but it is the application will have the question where it asks for it. And then while I am sharing slides, I did want to just let people know, so you can apply several different ways. You can just go online and apply. You can call either the DWS office or the Holy Cross Ministries Promotora office is willing to help families apply. There also are locations throughout the state. I put the Park City office just because that's where I'm located. But if you go to DWS's website, they do have physical offices that have computer terminals there and staff that can help you, complete the application. Are there other questions? Oh, go ahead. Has anyone else that's joining us on the call, have you been helping clients through the application process, or have you tried yourself? I'm curious to hear how it's going. So the switch in the rules that allowed mixed status families to apply for the subsidy just started in April. So I know there are some growing pains with the application process. Does anyone else here on the call have any advice or comments that they'd like to make about it?
I have another question.
Please.
Sorry, I have like 1,000 questions.
Yes, we're here.
So, oh, I totally spaced it. Hold on. Oh, do you have to keep providing income, or is it like you apply, you provide your income, and then in a year they check up or whatever, or do you have to provide it like every month?
Once a year.
Once a year, yeah.
Hi, so I'm Tony Roberts. I'm a child advocate at YWCA Utah's DV shelter. We have a lot of families that are needing childcare. I haven't had any clients, families who are experiencing the mixed status issue, but I am working with a lot of families who need to utilize the homeless childcare program, which recently, I think you guys got a new form. I think some of the struggle we're having with that is in their communication with childcare centers who, so I had a family recently who they weren't getting assistance fast enough from DWS. And so the childcare center made the kids, they wouldn't take the kids anymore. And so that coordination between DWS and the childcare centers seems to be where we're getting kind of cut up.
Yeah, and I know it is tricky for families because as part of your application, you're supposed to identify the placement of the child, and a lot of families, because it takes a while to get through the application process, maybe on wait lists or maybe, trying to figure it out. Unfortunately, that's not something, so no one on the call actually works for DWS. We were trying to gather people together in the community who are working with families or families themselves who are interested in learning more. But I don't have a good answer for that. I know that is hard for families, and it's hard for the providers to hold spaces that then, aren't able to fill with that child. So I think, Tony, do you have any suggestions of a better way? I'm happy to pass that on to DWS and see if we can.
Well, so I don't, but I guess I would ask, the community partners then, have you guys run into the same problem? Is this common, or is it just something that I'm experiencing, or, some suggestions from any of you as to sort of how you navigate that process between balancing the childcare application process and getting a family into a center right away as they're needing to go into work?
So I can say a little bit about actually with another agency that also offers childcare. So the Utah Community Action, they do have, I used to work with them at one time. I was an RCS specialist. And when you have families going in that are homeless, they put the application in and they try to get them in almost immediately. Like when they put the application in, they do their weekly meetings, and then they try to get them in as quick as possible. Those are the ones that are the priorities that they always try to get in. So that would be another avenue, another agency that you can probably reach out to and connect with them, and then also give that information to your clients that are needing that assistance and have it expedited, because homelessness is a big issue that's happening everywhere. Unfortunately, I mean, our kids are having to deal with so many things, and then in addition to the family trying to look for childcare for their children is a difficult one. But I know the Utah Community Action, they do work with the homeless kids and try to get them in pretty quickly. So that would be another way you can contact
That's helpful.
another
Thank you.
community partner. Mhm.
Carmen, do you know, once an application is approved, is there any availability to have retroactive payments for, so let's say a child, has started on a center in such a date, they've started the application process, but they aren't approved for 3 weeks. Is there an ability to have the child care subsidy applied retroactively for those 3 weeks in my example? Does anyone know?
I haven't experienced that. Have you experienced that, Estefania?
Well, I was
Where
gonna
they
say,
did the
so
retroactive?
I don't know if I'm being honest, I don't really keep in contact with the subsidy after we've gotten the approval and sent it over to them. Usually I'm trying to find the letter I got from this one client. So she had applied in September and we didn't get the approval until yesterday. But on that approval letter, it says that it is she's approved for a certain amount back in September and she's approved for another amount back in October. I just wasn't sure if that was up to the subsidy to do that retroactive. I mean, DWS approved it, but I think, I mean, I'm not sure where it goes from there, but I have experienced it. I just haven't continued with it. I'm hoping with this client, I can see her today. I'm actually at the, one of the childcare centers I work on Tuesdays. So I'm hoping I can see her today and kind of do something with that. We'll see.
Well,
No,
no, that's a
I was
great
gonna
point, Tony. I'll follow up with DWS and see if we can figure that out. If your eligibility dates back to the date of your application, and then I guess it's on the agency to be willing, to extend credit, in other words. But that's a great point. I'll follow up and see if I can figure that out. Alex?
Yeah, I was going to say, I noticed that sometimes when families are applying for the child care subsidy, and they're working with that child care provider, wherever they are, the child care provider is the one that's calling up DWS and finding the status of where they're at. So yeah, I think that they can go back retroactive, but it's at the responsibility of
the subsidy.
of the provider who's following up with them.
Kristen, it's Emmy. I wonder if it's possible for us to do a little bit of outreach to childcare centers to explain the sort of lag. It could take up to 90 days. Please be good stewards. Please work with, the clients so that the kids can get into care, know that the monies will be coming, but, would you be willing to accept it retroactive? Like, I think as much as we're doing the outreach to families who are eligible, I also wonder if we help kind of do a little media blitz with childcare centers to say, we really are trying to support you and get you that subsidy funds in addition to, whatever payments the families are making. And maybe that's another way to enhance the likelihood that centers will take families with a subsidy if they know that this money is going to come through. It's just going to take a bit of time.
Yeah, great idea. Thanks, Emmy. Alex, you had a question?
Yeah, right on with that. If somebody applies and they get it approved, and then let's say they lose their job, right, with the layoffs going on or something. And so let's say they're approved for $800 a month and they get laid off. Are they allowed to apply again a couple months later and say, look, my income has changed dramatically and I'm now making X amount less in order to be approved for more? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the way that the amount of the subsidy is determined, it actually is not based on your income. So if you qualify for income, then you're in the program. And the way the program works, it's based on the age of the child, so higher subsidies for younger children because the care is more expensive. So it kind of goes down over time. And then they have different rates for the type of provider. So in other words, if you're at a family-based licensed provider, that amount of subsidy is lower than if you were at a center-based provider. But if your income fluctuates within the year, that doesn't matter.
Okay, that was my question. So if I have like an infant in a center and I am under that 66,000, then it's just a set amount no matter how much under I am.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's really, the income is just a cap. Like if you're under, you're in. If you're over, you're out. And there's not a lot of a differential underneath there. One thing you do need to be careful of is there is a work requirement. And I think there is a certain amount of time where doing a job search counts as your activity. But in other words, if you started the program and then were laid off and then decided to kind of be a stay-at-home parent, you would lose the subsidy. So that is one clarification. Do we have some other questions? Anyone else? Carla, oh, Carissa. Hi, welcome.
Hi, so sorry I'm late to the party today.
No problem.
So I just heard Alex ask about the $66,000 and being underneath that. I've tried to find online without success where the breakdown is of income. Would you be able to put that information in the chat, or
Yep.
that would be great. Yeah, I'd appreciate that a lot. So,
Yeah.
So I am a director of a child care center. I actually think I remember meeting you at an advocacy meeting in the spring. So thanks for facilitating this. I appreciate it, or being part of this. So I just know that there's families here that could definitely benefit from this right now. And I just want to be able to get the income out, or the information out there to them. Yeah, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, so they do, it's kind of hard. They put it in a table, but sometimes it's hard to find. I did put the link in the chat, but I also, just for kind of general purposes, and it's scaled on the size of your household. So for a 2-person household, the annual income limit this year is $54,132. And then for a 3-person household, it's $66,888. And a 4-person household is $79,620. And those numbers are all available in that link. I'll try to see if I can just put my little chart in the chat as well, but sometimes the chat is not friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And these numbers are updated every year. I mean, it's always, the line is always 85% of the state median income, but each year they set what the state median income is.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's gonna let me put it in.
Okay. So with that being updated every year, like when families are approved for a year, how does that work when it's updated?
So I think each family, each applicant is on a 1-year cycle for themselves. So let's say you were approved in September, the September of the following year, you would have to meet the eligibility criteria again. Although I think they don't make you prove up again, your child's birthday, some of the basics, but I think they do want to know that you're still under income and that you're working or in school, or there's a couple of other, basically that you are doing some activity that, has a need for childcare. So you'll have to prove that up annually. The income levels change just every year on its own schedule, right? And they typically come out kind of in April, the median incomes, but I've noticed that DWS seems to update their charts every year in October.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I can't remember who went at first. Tony?
I think Alex was before me.
Oh, Alex.
You're good. You mentioned that school, like, does it count as working? Does that make sense? You just prove that you're going to school?
Yep.
Okay, and is there a certain amount of credits you need to be taking? Do you have to be full-time?
I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to look into that, but yes, basically. And I think it might be where you need to be like on a degree track.
Yeah.
So if you were just kind of dabbling, I'm not sure they would count that, but I don't know. Carmen or Carlos, do you guys know what the education credit requirements are?
Do you guys remember, Carmen or Stefania?
Yeah, well, I know when they're in school, they have to be at least whatever the hours of childcare services they need. They look at the hours of school time that they're in. Yeah. So they match the hours. Yeah, because they're not gonna, it's just like the employment. They're not gonna pay for childcare if you're not working, or if you're only working X amount of hours. The whole purpose is for you to be either at school or work, and they do get the information from the schools as well. So you have to submit that as well. It's just like a job, same thing. But yeah, they look at it hour for hour.
Okay,
And
and then sorry, keep going.
Well, so the hour requirement, if you're a single parent household, you have to be working at least 15 hours a week. So I would assume that means also
Yes.
15 hours of schooling. If you have a dual adult household, the second parent needs to work at least 30 hours a week.
So
And then you have,
together you have to have at least 45 hours.
well, so you'd have to, if you have two parents, you need one working at least 15 and one working at least 30. And if you just have a single adult household, that adult needs to work or go to school at least 15 hours a week. Those are the minimums.
Okay. And I had one other really quick question. Does the subsidy go directly to the daycare or the center or something, or do they work through you?
Yes.
Or am I a middleman, or does it just go right to
Nope,
them?
straight to the childcare provider.
The payments go straight to the child care provider, but you as the family kind of own it. So if you wanted to switch providers, it follows you, but the money
Okay.
flows directly to the provider.
Okay, thanks.
Tony?
All right. So one question I had, I love that there are providers here. The question I have for the providers, a lot of the families that I work with, they're not super familiar with the subsidy process. And a question I get a lot is, well, how am I going to pay for this? What do I do? Like how, and they're surprised that, the first step is reaching out to providers before they have the subsidy. So I would love to hear from providers, like what does that conversation usually look like when a family calls you and doesn't quite have their subsidy yet? Do they need to let you know right away? Is it something that you ask about in your intake process? What does that conversation typically look like when you're talking to a new family?
One thing that I can say is if you have a family that's looking for childcare services and they do have to have somewhere where they want to place their child, they can go on to the Care About Childcare website here in Utah, and they can have access to look at the providers, and they can click by the zip code of where they live. Maybe they're looking for a provider that's close in their area, or possibly they're looking for someone that's close to their work, because it's just easier for them. So they can call and check to see if there's vacancies, and they can do that online to see if there's vacancies available. They can even go and look at the provider, either whether it be center-based or home daycare provider, and see if that's something that they would like prior to going, to apply. And then this way they'll have an educated guess as to, this is where I want my child to be, right? But when they do put the application in, they have to give a name of a provider that they chose, right? And they're going to know that if that provider has vacancies or not. Sometimes what the providers can do is, whether it be center-based or home-based, they can hold a spot for a day or two, or maybe even a week, just depending on, what provider you're going to, if they know that you're really interested in getting your child there. But again, home daycare providers and center-based providers, it's a business. So they don't want to waste a spot if that person is not going to get their child in there. So they have to show some kind of, due diligence and to complete those applications with their provider information on there, so that they know that they are really interested, right? But that's one website that they can go to, the Care About Childcare website, because they cover all of the different counties throughout the state of Utah.
I went ahead and put that link in the chat if anyone would like it.
That's great. It is a good resource, and you can filter by those providers that accept the DWS subsidy. And I think, Carmen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you can put in, I'm planning to be at provider X, and then go through the process, right? But if you decide, once you're approved that there's an opening at provider Y, you do have the ability to change your provider. Is that correct? I mean, you're not beholden to the provider that you put down on your application.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct. They want to have a provider on the application, but if there's a change, maybe the vacancy is no longer available. So you can call them up and let them know, this is a new provider that I would like, due to no more vacancies, or maybe the flexibility of the new provider that they're trying to choose for their care of the children.
Right. So I would encourage families, right, even if you don't have 100% certainty where your child is going to be, to go ahead and start the application process, because it does take time, right?
Sorry, one more quick question. Is there a way to get a recording of this to share with my team?
Yes, so we are recording it, and then this will be my first time. I'll figure out how to make it a video and send out a link. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, if anyone has any questions, please let us know. Let me put, I shared it briefly, but hold on, let me see if I can put in the chat the numbers. Oh, thank you. Carmen put the eligibility quick reference guide. Oh, that's great. So that PDF is available. We'll make this recording available. And also, we really just kind of want to continue the conversation. This is a program that a lot of families don't know about. I think it's an underutilized resource in most communities. And we really are just interested in educating families so that they have access, to child care subsidies, and that they have a lot of choices for, where they want, what best suits their family needs for their child care needs. But we would love to educate more families and more providers. So thank you everyone who came today, and let's continue the conversation. Emmy, I see you popped on camera. Did you want to say something?
No, I just wondered, Carlos, if you wanted to take a second, in addition to Stephanie and Carmen, if you wanted to introduce Sergio.
Yeah, so we got Sergio here, community health worker. He actually just started yesterday, and he used to work for DWS. So we got him on board with us. We're lucky to have him. Hopefully we'll be able to tackle into his expertise once he gets all fully trained. But Sergio, you wanna just tell him a little something about yourself?
Can you guys hear me good?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for the warm welcoming. I'm very excited for this new chapter of my working life to be with all of you. And definitely, I'm a team player. So please utilize me as much as you can and you need. And I was listening to conversations and it's a pretty good training. I've been, I write things down about, some of the stigmas and I want for once to make sure that you guys understand the eligibility worker only does work the verifications that are received. So it's not a stigma of, well, the eligibility worker is not doing their job or this or that, or, eligibility worker process all the verifications into ERAP, which is the system that DWS utilizes. And obviously, the more information we provide to DWS, the better. Okay. When there are questions about, income, or especially in the terms of childcare, the biggest indicator for childcare is the hours for needed childcare. Okay, because a lot of times these are not reflected correctly, or even, in the case of the provider, who is the provider? Maybe, grandma is the provider, maybe the cousin, or, the brother, the sister, and they have been being trained or licensed or registered. So those are a huge problem, when people are applying for childcare benefits, because obviously if they don't know that need to be a register, DWS are not able to make the payment and to make the payment to them. So, and the other question or thing that I was wondering about, we were talking about this self-employment, those people that have and their own businesses. It's easier that it looks like, and probably that's a target population that we are not talking to. because we make the assumption they make big time money. But when you go through the tax returns, especially, understanding the type of corporation, if it's a LLC or a partnership, and you check the tax returns, obviously you can identify if that business is losing or making money or even, and they fall under the eligibility criteria. So is it easier than it looks like? It's just a little bit complicated, but as you guys pointed to the DWS website, they explain absolutely everything about how to navigate. My expertise has been that, when I was an eligibility worker, I did not receive all the verifications, and that made the to take a determination was a harder thing to do, because obviously you need those verifications in order to comply with IRS. And I hope that we can come up with a system, to make sure that the people that are applying for benefits, they understand that these are much needed requirements. And I know that we go over and over it. I've been doing outreach for many years, and I know that people, they have their situations and whatnot, but definitely creating a guideline for them to ensure that they understand how reporting works. One of the things that you were mentioning was like, well, what if my income fluctuates? Definitely needs to be reported. Anything that is gonna create a necessity, whether it's less or more, has to be reported, because if you don't report it, then it can become an overpayment. And that's happening too. The people get surprised when DWS send an overpayment for, food stamp benefit, for childcare benefits, for anything, because they identify that the family forgot to report this. So anyhow, I'm sorry for all this. I just want to say hello everyone, and yeah, definitely I'm for the game, and very happy to be with you all.
No, thank you, Sergio. So I do have a quick question. So maybe I answered incorrectly when Alex and I were talking before. So if you've been approved, and now I think she said, what if you got laid off or your income was reduced? Are you supposed to report any change of income within the 12 months? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I misspoke earlier. I thought you just had to do it once a year.
Right. What will happen, obviously, the IRS would indicate if the person loses their job and, for example, they receive unemployment benefits, that will reflect on IRS. So anything that targets the system for a communication, like, for example, we are not part of unemployment compensation, but DWS process the unemployment compensation. So that's a target. So the worker will ask the question to the family about, hey, we noticed that there is a change in income, and they have to report that if they fail to report those changes.
Okay, so you do need to report any change of income increase or decrease as throughout the year? Like
You should.
Okay,
And then,
no, thank you for that.
it essentially, if it's existential, okay, like, for example, like, we know that we have a lot of seasonal workers where they make, like, for example, a lot of money during the winter time because they're like working cleaning the snow or whatever it might be. So it's a higher peak, right? And then there comes the spring and summer, and maybe they're working in the yard or whatever, and there is a reduced income. So but definitely, in order to avoid any overpayment, definitely, if it's a substantial amount of income, that should be reported.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Sergio, it's sounding like better to be proactive and keep the DWS worker informed as status changes happen related to income, right? So that
Correct.
nothing comes back to kind of ping them on the back end, or have that be a reason for folks to be denied, or, like you said, overpayment. So, okay.
Awesome. And Carlos put a link in to the chart on the eligibility manual that does talk about the changes that need to be reported. So thank you.
Yeah, so I don't think necessarily you were wrong, Kristen. But it's all like Sergio was saying, that it's always wise to report it. It might not even change anything, but it's always wise to just report any changes, you know, and then you still get to keep your childcare for that year. But yeah, definitely report those changes.
Okay, great. One other thing, Sergio, that you mentioned that I think a lot of people may not know. So oftentimes, most of the child care subsidy placements are in licensed centers or licensed family homes, but you can be approved as a family, friend, and neighbor provider as someone that the subsidy is paid to. And so you don't have to be licensed, you will have to be vetted. I think there's a criminal background check and an inspection and a small amount of kind of training requirements. So there is some vetting that is done to be approved as a family, friend, and neighbor provider. But for families whose preference is to have, say, an aunt or a grandmother or neighbor or anyone provide the childcare, that is something that is possible. I do think in order to be approved, the family, friend, and neighbor provider does have to show legal residency status. So that might be one barrier, but anyways, it is an option. And for a lot of families that prefer that type of childcare, it's nice that the subsidy can also be used in that situation. So welcome, Sergio, and thank you for providing those clarifications. It's very helpful. All right, is there any other topics that we can cover together? Alex?
I have another question really fast. Carmen sent out that eligibility quick reference guide. Is there somebody who can just like walk us through it really fast? I was looking at it and I'm not sure I can understand it really well.
Carlos, Carmen, Estefania?
Anybody get, like, can you just tell me what I'm looking at? There's like a whole bunch of numbers, but I was like, I don't know what this means.
Yeah, so I just pulled it up. So I think on the childcare on the far right, oh, I'm sorry. So there is an asset limit too. If you have more than $1 million, that you are not eligible. But then I think it's just getting into your monthly income, you know, based on the size of your household. So for example, a 2-person household, you know, $45.12 a month would be the cap.
Yes.
And then where do I see what the subsidy is going to be?
So that is in a different chart. Let me put that in the chat. Hold on.
So this is a chart that was being utilized with DWS, and it has, you know, the financial, the SNAP, which is the food stamps, and then the childcare. And this is just for you as a reference. So you're going to just go straight across, you know, from where it says a each age size, household size to, and just going straight across, their max out is going to be $45.12.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the right table with the
Just fine.
payments. Here we go. All right, so I put in the chart. Oh wait, does it just go to the eligible? Okay, so that link may just take you to the top of the eligibility manual. You want to look at table 3, the maximum monthly child care payments. And then again, it's based on provider type and age of the child. So for example, 0 to 24 months at a licensed center is $1,040 a month. But for that same, a residential certificate provider would be $525 for that age child.
How do I get to that table 3?
So if you go to the link, the eligibility manual, and then on the left side, there's charts and tables, like a little blue book that looks like charts and tables. And if you go down to table 3. Is it appearing for you?
I don't see it. Can I share my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why when I put the link in, it just goes to like eligibility manual. I can't get it to go directly to the table.
Just kidding.
I'll share my screen. Sorry.
I was like, I don't think I can share mine.
All right, let's try this.
Okay.
So.
Oh, I see where you're looking. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're over here on the left, charts and tables, down to table 3.
Table 3. Okay, yep, that makes sense. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No, thank you. I've lost my controls here. Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, we're gonna offer this again at 10:30 in Spanish. Again, you know, and I don't speak Spanish, so I'll be very quiet on that one. I'll just welcome everyone. So if anyone knows anyone who would like to kind of ask questions or learn more in Spanish, we'll start that one at 10:30. Awesome. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.